The Srax salvage team prided themselves on their efficiency. Xenorelics were the bread and butter, the decaying husks of extinct civilizations littering the vastness of the Orion Belt, a potential treasure trove. Captain Velric, a seasoned Thraxian with decades of scuttle runs to his name, knew there was profit to be made out here, even if it took some chitin-staining work. Today, however, his crew stumbled onto something far more than scrap metal riches.
Void, take me.
His comms crackled with static and the low-pitched thrum of Lyrian speech. His first mate Kirill's voice taut with surprise. Velrac's compound eyes narrowed. Kirill never swore, not on salvage operations.
What's got those feathers of yours ruffled first?
He barked into the comm, the hum of his powered exoskeleton filling the claustrophobic confines of the scavenger ship.
Captain, you need to see this. Sector Gamma 3.
Kirill replied, a note of urgency in his voice that set Velrac's mandibles twitching. The salvage human warship, the Nautilus, hung in the blackness of space like a ghost story made solid. Its hull was pockmarked and scarred, remnants of a battle so ancient it had faded from even the collective chronicles of the Lyrian stellar archives. Humans were peculiar, short-lived, volatile, with a bewildering mix of savagery and technological wonder. They were gone now, wiped out centuries ago in their final defiant stand against the Federation.
It could be an old battle cruiser first,
Velrac said, squinting at the display in front of him. Ancient human battleships were notoriously durable. Some even contained caches of archaic yet valuable technology.
Standard procedure?
It's not that, Captain.
Kirill said, his voice low.
It's the life signs.
Life signs?
The term sent a chilling pulse through Velrac's thorax. The Nautilus should have been a tomb, a relic, not a living ship.
Human?
Negative. A single signature. Definitely mammalian. Faint, but there.
Velrac's exoskeleton hissed as he shifted his weight. A live human was a problem on a cosmic scale. The treaties that ended their war were built on the certainty of their extinction. Any hint of their survival in the Federation they were now a part of would collapse like a dying star.
Quarantine the area.
Velrac snapped, mandibles working furiously.
Alert the fleet. We may need an inquisitorial team for this.
With all due respect, Captain.
Kirill's voice crackled in Velrac's ear.
An Inquisitor is likely to sanitize the target. Perhaps it would be wise to investigate first.
It was risky. Horribly so. An Inquisitor would have his head if this gamble went wrong. Kirill wasn't just his best flyer. The Lyrian had a nose for profit that rivaled a Calorian syndicate boss. If there was anything valuable to be gleaned from the human relic, Kirill would know.
Agreed. Prepare a docking team,
Velrac said, the decision leaving a sour taste in his mouth. His compound eyes locked on the image of the Nautilus. This wasn't just salvage anymore. It was tiptoeing around unexploded mines and a pitch-black munition dump. The docking clamp hissed as it made contact with the Nautilus. The air inside the derelict was frigid, smelling of rust and stale oxygen. Lieutenant Rax, a Thraxian as steady as a neutron star, was the first through, the beam of his mag pistol slicing through the darkness. Velrac, Kirill, and 2 Calorian enforcers followed, their bulky frames filling the narrow corridor of the old battleship. The deeper they moved, the more the tension in Velrac's chitinous plate grew. Ancient warships were labyrinths designed to confuse and deter boarders. Worse, the lights were barely functional, casting flickering, ominous shadows on the scarred alloy walls. This felt less like a salvage operation and more like an autopsy.
Readings indicate a sealed compartment up ahead,
Kirill whispered, his avian eyes gleaming in the low light.
That's where the sign of life is originating.
Rax, breach the door,
Velrac ordered, his voice echoing in the silence. The Thraxian lieutenant nodded, the thermocharge glowing an eerie crimson as he set it against the rusted barrier. The blast tore through the decaying metal with a shriek of tortured alloy, sending a shower of sparks into the gloom beyond. The 5 Xenos surged in, mag pistols raised. The compartment was small and dim. A single cryogenic pod stood in the center, its glass casing frosted with age. Inside lay a figure, unquestionably human, its pale flesh visible beneath the tattered remains of some archaic military uniform. The cryotube's lid hissed open, releasing a swirl of freezing mist. Velrac tightened his grip on his weapon. No human could survive cryosleep that long, not without horrific genetic modification. Whatever was in that pod, it wasn't fully human anymore. Yet the figure that clawed its way out was lean, almost gaunt, the face lined and etched with the weariness of 1,000 battles. The figure blinked bleary eyes as if adjusting to the light after centuries of slumber. Then those eyes snapped open, hard, cold and blazing with simmering fury.
What the hell?
The human's voice was a guttural growl, a language Velrak didn't understand, yet the visceral shock of hearing a long-dead species echoed at his mandibles. His Thoraxian and Kaldorian subordinates recoiled in pure instinctive terror. Only Kirill, with his Lyrian intellect, stood transfixed.
We are a Federation salvage crew,
He said in Galactic Standard, his voice slightly faltering. The human's eyes slowly focused on the assembled Xenos, their confusion evident. Then understanding dawned, and with it came a rage so potent the air seemed to crackle with it.
Xeno scum.
The human snarled, the language shifting seamlessly into Galactic Standard, though rough and accented by disuse. Before any of them could react, the human lunged forward, a primal scream of anger tearing from his throat. Velrak had seen warriors charge into battlefields fueled by fear or righteous fury, but the human's attack wasn't tactical. It wasn't even sane. It was a whirlwind of raw, desperate hatred. Every strike meant to kill or maim. Rax, the unlucky vanguard, was caught off guard. The human's fist smashed into his thorax, denting his exoskeleton and sending him hurtling back with a strangled gasp. The Kaldorian guards reacted, their bulky mag cannons barking with thunderous roars. The human was a blur, though, dodging and weaving through the kill zone with a speed that seemed impossible for after being roused from such a long slumber. One Kaldorian screamed as the human with seemingly inhuman strength hoisted him by his armored collar and flung him into his partner, both Xenos collapsing in a tangle of limbs and weaponry.
Take him down!
Velrak roared, horrified and fascinated in equal measure. This wasn't a relic, a fading ember from the past. The human was a star-going supernova. Kirill, finally shaking himself out of his stupor, flicked a switch on his gauntlet, activating a disruptor field meant to immobilize targets. The field washed over the human, the crackling energy causing him to stumble. He roared in defiance, eyes blazing with a primal fire that made Velrax's thorax tremble. The disruptor whined, straining under the sheer force of the human's will. For a single terrifying second, it seemed like he would break through it. Then, his body spasmed and he crumpled to the floor, breath rasping harshly. Velrak approached cautiously, every instinct screaming at him to blast the downed human into oblivion. Yet the curiosity battled that primal fear. This wasn't some battle-crazed berserker. Despite the fury and impossible strength, there was a flicker of calculation in the human's eyes, a tactical awareness that spoke of more than just mindless rage.
Secure him.
Velrak ordered, his mandibles clicking nervously. He had stumbled upon something potentially explosive, a wild card that could shift the very balance of galactic power. The ghosts of humanity were not so easily laid to rest, it seemed. They bound the human in heavy-duty restraints, the once formidable warrior now subdued and glaring daggers at his captors. Back on the salvage vessel in a hastily converted holding cell, Velrak stood before the captured anomaly. The human had ceased his struggles, instead studying his surroundings with the steely gaze of a cornered predator.
Identify yourself.
Velrak demanded, his voice amplified by the holding cell's acoustics.
Captain Nathaniel DeMarco, Soul Defense Fleet, Earth.
The man spat, the words carrying a weight that Velrak could feel. Despite not grasping their full context, memories stirred, fragments of old records painting a picture of a proud, warlike race that clung stubbornly to their single star system.
Earth is no more. Humans are extinct.
Velrak stated bluntly. This was the hard truth they had built upon, a foundation stone of the Federation. If this man was proof that it was all a lie.
Like hell!
The human DeMarco snarled.
We bled you, Xenobastard, for every inch of space. You may have won the war, but we're not dead yet.
Velrak exchanged uneasy glances with Kirill. He'd hoped for a delusional relic, a survivor driven mad by isolation. This was something else entirely, a defiant ember smoldering from the ashes of the past.
How did you survive?
Kirill asked, Lyrian curiosity taking hold. DeMarco's gaze swept over them, lingering on the unfamiliar avian form of the first mate.
Cryosleep pod malfunction. Looks like I overslept a lifetime or two.
He said, a bleak humor lining his voice. His words were measured now, the initial explosion of rage subsiding under a cold layer of calculation.
What's your next move, Captain?
Velrak needed to know, needed to plan. If DeMarco escaped, reported to some unknown human remnant, it would be catastrophe. DeMarco barked a bitter laugh.
Me? Survive? Get answers, maybe a little bit of that sweet payback you Xenos love to preach about.
His eyes narrowed.
But first, I need to know a few things. How long was I under? How much has changed?
The question hung in the air, heavy and laden with possibilities. It was a strategic question, not one of mere curiosity. Velrak knew revealing too much was a risk. The human would use any scrap of information to his advantage, but keeping him ignorant was just as dangerous. This wasn't a mere curiosity to be dissected. It was a tactical mind emerging from a self-imposed exile. He turned to Kirill, Illyrian's avian features composed in thought.
First, what are protocols in this situation like this?
There aren't any,
Kirill admitted.
There's never been a precedent. An Inquisitor would sanitize everything, eliminate the variables.
An option we'll keep open,
Velrak muttered. No Xeno in their right mind would risk the fallout if the existence of surviving humans got out. Yet the thought of snuffing out this tenacious spark, this echo of a dead warrior race, sat uneasily with him. DeMarco wasn't a relic, he was a wild card thrown into a carefully balanced galactic deck. He could be the key to understanding this extinct species, or the spark that would ignite a firestorm. A flicker of movement caught his attention. The human, bound as he was, had shifted with unnatural grace, testing the restraints. Even captive, he exuded an aura of coiled danger.
You won't break free, human,
Velrak stated, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel.
Probably not,
Marco conceded, a flicker of amusement in his eyes.
But I might break a few of your friends.
The threat was veiled, but carried enough weight to make the Kaldorian guards bristle.
Listen,
Velrak began, carefully considering his words.
It's been 450 cycles since the war.
DeMarco visibly paled.
400. Your people are gone. Your planet, too.
Velrak finished. Pain flickered behind the human's defiance. Grief, or perhaps the phantom echo of Survivor's Guilt.
And the Federation? You Xeno bastards!
DeMarco spat, regaining his composure with alarming speed. Velrak sensed the human was baiting him, searching for weakness, looking for any crack he could exploit. He decided on calculated honesty, the best tool in his arsenal.
The Federation is an alliance of species,
he explained, watching DeMarco's reaction closely.
The Thoraxians, the Lyrians, the Kaldorians, and several others. Founded in the aftermath of the war, meant to prevent another conflict on that scale.
His chitin-plated thorax clenched. The war itself was a forbidden topic, the mere mention of it enough to trigger the cleanse protocols of the ever-vigilant Inquisitors. DeMarco's eyes, once blazing with fury, flickered with a mix of disbelief, then suspicion.
An alliance? You expect me to believe that?
He scoffed.
After everything?
His voice trailed off, hinting at horrors even Velrak didn't fully understand. This was the moment, the crossroads. Velrak had to make a choice. He could maintain protocol, let the humans stew in his isolation, alert the Inquisitors, and have them wipe the whole incident from existence. But a sliver of curiosity, fueled by Kirill's earlier words, tugged at him.
The past is complex, human,
Velrak said, the admission strange on his forked tongue.
There were indiscretions on all sides.
He was pushing boundaries, skirting the edge of danger. This conversation alone could put him under inquisitorial scrutiny. Yet the defiance of this long-dead soldier ignited something within him. A flicker of surprise crossed DeMarco's face, a chink in his armor of hatred.
No kidding,
he asked, his voice laced with bitter sarcasm.
But perhaps there's more you don't know about this new galaxy, Captain DeMarco.
Kirill interjected, the Lyrian's voice smooth and calm. A negotiator, Velrak realized. The first mate would take on the role of confidant for the human. It was a clever, dangerous ploy, a calculated risk. DeMarco stared at the avian Xeno, studying the strange creature before him.
Fine,
he finally barked.
Talk.
It began as a trickle of information. The establishment of the Federation, the treaties binding the once warring factions into a semblance of peace, the careful dance of trade and power plays that held the galaxy in a tense balance. Kirill spoke, carefully filtering information, weaving a narrative designed to pique DeMarco's interest while keeping their most vital secrets under wraps. The human listened, at first with open skepticism, then with a begrudging fascination. His outbursts of anger ebbed, replaced with a clinical detachment as he dissected the state of the galaxy. This wasn't just idle curiosity, this was a warrior analyzing a new battlefield.
So,
DeMarco rumbled after a long silence.
Earth is gone. Humanity is scattered, hunted, or just plain dead.
You Xenos patched up your differences, built yourselves a nice little playground. He barked a bitter laugh. Tell me, do you sleep well at night knowing what it cost? Velrak recoiled, an instinctive surge of outrage at the accusation, but Kirill raised a feathered hand, cutting him off.
No,
The Lyrian admitted, his voice devoid of the usual diplomacy.
none of us sleep soundly, Captain DeMarco. Every major race in the Federation carries the weight of past actions, the cost of survival.
DeMarco's gaze swept across their faces, the defiance in his eyes dimming slightly. He had expected gloating, a celebration of his people's downfall. Finding a measure of guilt instead was clearly disconcerting. Is that remorse I hear, First Mate Kirill? His voice was mocking, but the edge was blunted.
Awareness, Captain.
Kirill corrected.
An awareness that such sacrifices shouldn't be in vain. We built the Federation on the promise of a better future, on avoiding the bloodshed of the past.
Noble words. DeMarco sneered, yet his posture had shifted. No longer a caged animal, he seemed to be sizing them up with newfound calculation. And if someone rocks the boat, disrupts your delicate little peace? Velrak and Kirill exchanged a silent look. The human wasn't talking about himself anymore. His mind was racing, looking for weaknesses, for pressure points.
Captain Velrak!
The shout snapped them back to the present. One of the Caldorian guards stood at the entrance of the holding cell, panic etching his reptilian features.
Urgent transmission from Fleet Command. Highest priority.
A surge of apprehension ran through the cramped space, cutting short DeMarco's speculation. Fleet Command's involvement meant trouble. The kind of trouble that could bury this entire incident and its inconvenient human under layers of protocol and bureaucracy.
Patch it through.
Velrak ordered, mandibles working nervously beneath his mask. This was it. The moment their little gamble would be revealed and consequences would sweep down upon them all. A holographic projection sprang to life, the rigid face of Inquisitor Varak filling the space with an icy aura of authority.
Captain Velrak,
The Inquisitor's smooth voice dripped with veiled suspicion.
you alerted us of a most unusual finding.
Velrak swallowed, the words catching in his thorax.
Affirmative, Inquisitor. A human survivor aboard a derelict battleship of the Old War era, the Nautilus.
A ripple of surprise echoed through the small compartment, even DeMarco's hardened features displaying a flash of shock. If his initial awakening was a metaphorical earthquake, the presence of an Inquisitor raised the stakes to apocalyptic levels.
Intact.
Varak's compound eyes narrowed, an unnervingly insect-like gesture.
The human was in some form of cryosleep,
Kirill interjected, his voice steady despite the rising tension.
physically unharmed, mentally uncertain due to prolonged isolation.
The protocol for such a scenario is clear.
Inquisitor Varak stated, his voice flattening into a cold monotone.
Eliminate the anomaly. The Federation cannot risk its stability on the whim of a single relic.
Velrak knew the order was expected. No Inquisitor would risk the possibility of a human resurgence, not on their watch. Yet he hesitated, an image of the human warrior flashing before his eyes, defiant, cunning, and with a flicker of shared guilt.
Inquisitor.
Velrak began, then paused, struggling for the right words.
The human, Captain DeMarco, displays advanced combat and strategic awareness. His interrogation could yield valuable insight into Earth's military capabilities. Knowledge we could use
To bolster our defenses.
Varak cut him off, the Inquisitor's voice filled with disdain.
You overreach, Captain. The human is broken, alone, an echo of a dead race. You'd risk the entire Federation for a shadow.
DeMarco shifted in his restraints, a spark of amusement dancing in his cold eyes. The Inquisitor's dismissal was both a reprieve and an insult. The human, the broken shadow of a dead race, saw his worth reduced even further. Perhaps that was something he could use.
Perhaps the Inquisitor is correct.
Kirill chimed in, his Lyrian mind always seeking opportunity.
Perhaps this human is simply a broken relic. A relic best studied before disposal.
Intriguing.
Inquisitor Varak mused, his own multifaceted eyes now shifting towards DeMarco's bound form. The Inquisitors were not known for mercy, but they were meticulous and morbidly curious in their pursuit of security.
A living archive from a dead era.
Kirill pressed on.
With the proper persuasion, The human might divulge Earth's tactical doctrines, weaknesses in their fleet deployment, technological secrets. A treasure trove of intelligence, Inquisitor, if approached with the right methodology.
Varric studied DeMarco critically. The human was a mess, physically weakened, his spirit battered by isolation and shock, yet a kernel of defiance remained. That same dangerous, calculating fire that Velrak saw smoldering even in chains.
Very well.
The Inquisitor declared, surprising them all.
I will dispatch a specialist team to conduct a thorough assessment. Until then, Captain Velrak, keep this artifact under maximum security. Any breach will be considered treason and treated accordingly.
The transmission ceased as abruptly as it began, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Velrak exhaled, a puff of vapor that hung in the air like a ghost. He had just gambled the fate of the Federation on the back of a dead man's unbroken will. DeMarco the Relic watched all this with a predator's gleam in his eyes.
So,
He rasped, the defiance returning with a vengeance.
which one of you lucky bastards gets to break me?
The specialist team arrived with unsettling efficiency. Velrak watched a sleek inquisitorial vessel dock against their scavenger ship, disgorging a quartet of figures that radiated an aura of cold detachment. The team leader was a xenospecies unfamiliar to Velrak, an arachnid being with 8 multifaceted eyes glinting ominously.
Greetings, Captain Velrak.
The creature's voice crackled like brittle leaves through the comlink.
I am Interrogator Prime Xiles. Allow me to handle this specimen.
Zyle's team swiftly descended upon the holding area. They ignored DeMarco's defiant snarls as they detached the human from his restraints, replacing them with their own high-tech bindings that pulsed with an ominous energy. Kirill moved to protest, but Velrak held him back with a subtle gesture. They were on thin ice already. An open interference with the Inquisitors was a quick route to oblivion.
This way first,
Velrak said, nodding towards the airlock where their guests awaited. While curiosity gnawed at him, he couldn't deny the relief at handing over the volatile relic to the professionals. DeMarco offered one last rebellious glare before his form disappeared, swallowed by the stark inquisitorial ship. As their unwanted passengers departed, taking the walking wildfire with them, Kirill finally spoke.
This is madness, Captain. We've unleashed something.
He shook his head wearily.
Perhaps,
Velrak admitted. The image of DeMarco's burning defiance etched in his mind.
or maybe we've just opened a door. The Federation has grown comfortable in its peace. It was time they remembered there were monsters beyond their borders, and perhaps still within.
His eyes settled on the cold blackness of space where the Nautilus had once hung, the ghost ship that delivered a stark awakening. The Federation was a house of cards intricately balanced on a foundation of lies. The human, broken or not, was a wild card flung violently into the mix. Whether chaos or a new era would follow, only time would tell.